Islamic State militants have blown up a 12th century mosque in Mosul as Iraqi forces continue their campaign to expel the group from the city. It was from this ancient landmark 3 years ago that Islamic State's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, proclaimed a caliphate, as Ann Barker reports.
The Great Mosque of Al-Nouri has a history far longer and more celebrated than the Islamic State group, but it was here that the group's self-styled leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, just on 3 years ago, declared a caliphate over much of Iraq and Syria. The famous mosque, with its iconic leaning minaret, stood for nearly 900 years, arguably the most recognisable landmark on the Mosul skyline. But now the mosque has been reduced to rubble in the battle for Iraq's second biggest city, and the minaret has been blown to smithereens. Jacinta Carroll at Australia's Strategic Policy Institute in Canberra says there were warnings in recent days the mosque could become collateral.
There are reports that have been coming out of Mosul over the last few days since the Iraqi government stated that retaking the Grand Mosque would be a great victory for them and was a particular focus. We've heard disturbing reports about IS potentially detonating the mosque and also potentially using human shields. So we're just seeing that path of destruction that IS has demonstrated through their various retreats in Iraq and Syria.
Iraq's military says the explosions happened as elite Iraqi soldiers got to within 50 metres of the mosque. Iraq's Prime Minister says IS militants blew up the mosque as a concession of defeat. But the Islamic State group on an Islamist website blamed US airstrikes for destroying the mosque. Either way, the mosque's destruction is a loss not just to Islam, but to the jihadist group and its cause. Jacinta Carroll.
This has been a critical piece of IS's narrative about having a caliphate and justifying their role in the territory that they have taken in Iraq and Syria and justifying their cause. Of course, what we've seen now with the destruction by IS of this very historic site, a 12th century mosque, and one that features very proudly in Iraq's history but also the history of Islam, is that there is complete disregard for that link when IS is under the pump.
Iraqi-led forces entered Mosul's old city earlier this week, where the last IS fighters remain holed up with tens of thousands of civilians. Some civilians, like Abdullah Ibrahim, have been trapped in the city for months with little to no food or water. The situation was very bad, he says. People in the Zirai district usually live on flour and water. This is what we have left, and there are very few families that have other food left. Water is what we need most, which we got from the well at the nearby mosque. You can get 2 barrels of water every day or every 2 days, about 20 litres of water. The fight to retake Mosul was launched more than 8 months ago and has displaced more than 800,000 people. The city's recapture by Iraqi forces would effectively mark an end to the Iraqi half of Islamic State's so-called caliphate, and while it's been a slow process, IS's defeat in Mosul is virtually inevitable. Jacinta Carroll again.
The reports are only of a few hundred fighters, and that's fairly consistent over the past few months. We heard at the beginning of the year that most senior IS members were leaving Mosul, and certainly they've lost the significant part of the city.
IS still has considerable control over large parts of Syria, and the battle for Raqqa, its de facto capital in Syria, is already well underway.
Ann Barker reporting.